Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of NCompass Live. I'm your host, Krista Porter, here at the Nebraska Library Commission. NCompass Live is the Commission's weekly webinar series where we cover a variety of topics that may be of interest to libraries. We broadcast the show live every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Central Time, but if you're unable to join us on Wednesdays, that's okay. We do record the show as we are doing today, and it'll be available for you to watch later at your convenience. And I'll show you at the end of today's show where you can access all of our show recordings. Both the live show and the recordings are free and open to anyone to watch. So please do spread the word, share with your friends, family, neighbors, colleagues, anyone you think might be interested in any of the topics we have on NCompass Live. For those of you not from Nebraska, the Nebraska Library Commission is the state agency for libraries. So we are similar to your whatever state library. So we provide training and resources and grants and databases to all types of libraries in the state. So you'll find shows on NCompass Live for all types of libraries, public, academic, K-12, corrections, museums, archives, historical societies. Really, your only criteria is that something to do with libraries. We bring in guest speakers to talk on NCompass Live sometimes, but we also have Library Commission staff that come on and do presentations for us. And that's what we have today. And today, because it is the last Wednesday of the month, it is Pretty Sweet Tech Day. Yay! The last Wednesday of the month, always, Amanda Sweet, who's with us. Good morning, Amanda.
Good morning.
She comes on, she's our technology innovation librarian here at the Nebraska Library Commission, and she comes on every, the last Wednesday of every month to talk about something techie related. We have other shows during the month that are also tech related, but you can always depend on the last Wednesday of the month, Amanda being here with us. And I say every last Wednesday of the month, except for last month, she was not here because she was at Computers and Libraries Conference in Washington, D.C. So she's going to tell us about all the cool things that she saw at Computers and Libraries 2025.
Cool.
So take it away, Amanda.
So it was an interesting year for libraries this year, and that theme kind of showed up in a lot of the different sessions at Computers and Libraries, which is not surprising in the slightest. I'm sure that the conference wasn't planned to be able to reflect those new and emerging themes, but here we are.
Yeah. Lots of things changed from when they opened up the call for presenters and when the conference, things changed very rapidly for many, many of us. Yes.
Yeah. So for a little bit of context, at the end of March, that would have been right around when the IMLS chaos was going on.
When it just started up,
yeah. And everyone was updating and changing their websites to make sure that the right keywords were used and trying to figure out all that mess. So that being said, the themes that I kind of wound up plucking out for this year's conference is first and foremost, as always, AI. I mean, it's a library tech conference, AI tools and trends happened. There was also more of a focus on trying to build this out into a framework so that libraries had more of a rhyme and a reason to be able to start tackling it. And then the recurring question that's been around for a while is how can libraries compete with AI and how can we adapt to use it to do our jobs better? And then that turned into how can libraries evolve to basically, in this day and age, just survive and thrive, because right now we're trying to find new ways to do what we've always done and not do what we've always done, because the role of the library is changing. In some cases it's becoming more of a meeting space. In some cases we're changing the way that we're all doing collection development, and everything is changing so that we can keep up with technology and make the case that we do awesome things and we should all be here. So
it sounds like that's been a theme to libraries ever since I started in this field.
It has, and it will be.
Yeah, there's always something new that's coming at us and that you got to figure out. And all right.
Yeah.
But we do it. We're still here and we'll keep doing it.
That's probably true across a lot of different industries too. Like it's a thing. And so one of the tools that everyone has been using to evolve has been building out new partnerships and ecosystem models. Some people call ecosystems collaboratives, some people call them consortiums, some people call them whatever you want to call it. It's just a group of people working together toward a shared goal to solve shared problems. And now we have new fresh crop of problems that are coming up. So we're building out a new fresh crop of ecosystems and partnerships to address what's cropping up now. So I'll dig into a little bit of that. And then the last bit of it is it was helpful to have a lot of different sessions about advocacy. How can we make our case better? How can we talk to our senators, representatives? How can we communicate our message to the public so that they know why libraries are awesome? And there were a bunch of different techniques to show that. And this year I put the link to, I'm not sure if this was here last year, but the session recordings are available on here. So not every session has their slide deck available on here. A good solid chunk of them are,
Mhm.
but yeah, this is if you want to do like a quick run through to get a feel for what the conference was all about. Clicking through some of these slide decks are helpful. It's never the same as actually hearing the speaker talk about it and hearing everything go on in the background, but it gives you like a general gist. And if you head on over to the daily agenda, this will also give you kind of a rundown of more specific details about some of the sessions that I'm going to talk about in later slides. So there's your context, and now I'm going to jump on back in here. So the first little technique on here is I split AI tools and literacy into two separate little categories. And I linked over to my 4 favorite slide decks that are available on the website that actually have specific AI tools that are listed, because that is always the number one thing that people want to know is which specific tools and gadgets should I actually experiment with to
Mhm.
be able to do my own exploration. So Mary Ellen Bates, she is always awesome about talking about the way that libraries are evolving in search. So in her Super Searcher tips, she talked about how that very same question that we brought up before, which was how can libraries compete with Google, like ChatGPT and all these different tools. And she brought up the awesome point that the public is generally talking about ChatGPT, but most people don't know about the other specialized AI tools that are available to be able to do their searches better. They don't know about Perplexity.ai. They don't know about Elixir. They don't know about all these different tools. So she basically came in and said, we're not competing with AI. We're helping our communities understand and leverage these tools better. And I've also seen people in my own family go onto a Google search result and just blindly trust the AI summary that's on the top of the results. So one of the things that we as a library have to do is start building that AI literacy in people that says you can't just blindly trust every single AI summary that's out there. Because, I mean, even my mom did it before. She was trying to find a tutorial to improve an Etsy site, and she blindly trusted the information that was on the top, and it turned out that it was going to a tutorial that was like 10 years out of date, but that was still available on the site, and she didn't check through to go to the source information, and it ended up adding like 2 hours to the time that it took to do what she was trying to do. And I've seen this not just from her, but from multiple people that I won't call them any.
Oftentimes AI, because it is not actually going, it's wrong.
Yeah,
It's blatantly wrong.
yeah,
Many times I actually use, I mean, I know this is going against everything you've got on your slides there. Whenever I
yeah.
do a search in Google now, I just put the minus AI on the end of the search. I believe that's the right format.
Yeah.
And then it just removes any of that AI suggestion, so you don't have to worry about, is this correct? It then just brings up your actual results. Because it's just too many stories and things when I've had found things that were absolutely wrong from it. Yeah.
And I was trying to actually do a search that would
See,
generate
that
that
one just came up
AI
with
thing.
sponsored ones. Didn't come up with anything AI. Interesting.
I know, like that never happens. And of course, the one time I try to demo it, um, really? Now they're just trying to make me look bad. You know?
I don't know.
Oh well, what are you gonna do? So usually what happens is that you do a search and then like the little AI generated summary shows up on top. And this is what my mom Googled.
There it is, the little star thing there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she just blindly trusted this.
And this is
And
what we should be teaching people, because if you notice, the first result after that is actually from Etsy itself, which is what you
yep,
should scroll down a
yeah.
bit. That is where you should be going, not to anything that's been generated by anything like this.
And in theory, it should have been actually pulling and summarizing these specific resources, but the right answer was actually here. And this didn't reflect that. So
Mhm.
I've been trying to tell her and pretty much everybody, don't just blind, like this may be a good like indicator to help you start building a mental understanding of what you're searching, but you still have to go to the source material and vet out the source material. And so that is
It's
part of,
something we've taught people to about using the internet in general. I
yeah,
mean, we've
yeah,
been trying to at least teach them. Yeah, well, there's whole courses on, figure out where the source is. Is it a reliable source? Is it someone who maybe has a bias one way or the other?
yeah,
That's just general kind of digital literacy, or just internet, searching the internet literacy, that we try to teach.
yeah.
Have been for years trying to teach, and now AI pops up there and everyone thinks it's somehow different from what was out there before, but it's not. It's just
It
a
is not.
different result, just like
Yeah.
all the other ones, and you have to evaluate it the same way you do anything else.
Yeah, but now you can just find misinformation faster.
Yeah.
You know? So I brought up this slide from Mary Ellen's deck just because I really liked it. And so this was her tangible resource that you can pull up that says, these are the specific tools that you should use in specific use cases. So most people want current information on a topic. So instead of going straight over to Google, she recommended going to these tools instead. And then instead of going to Google or a generic source, if you want peer-reviewed sources, you go over here. Perplexity.ai is one of my favorites. And I started using Elicit more now that she was talking about it. And Claude is also, I've used that a few times, and it's been incredibly helpful so far. And then the other tool that has been, I mean, Brian always puts together an awesome list of resources. So I just linked over to his deck. And if you sift through it, there's a whole bunch of tools for generating AI images, for AI automation tasks, and all this stuff. And then I linked over to David Lee King always puts together great resources. So his slide deck also has the AI automation and web design, marketing, all that good stuff. But
About searching,
Amy's,
someone does have a question about searching.
yeah.
You mentioned, since she just mentioned that, Mary Ellen, her slides mentioning. So wants to know about, what about Google Scholar? Is that still a thing people should be? I mean, that's not AI, of course.
So,
Just wants to know in general about Google Scholar as far as a place to find peer-reviewed good information.
and so
It's
Google
still out there, yeah.
Scholar, like Google Scholar still is in use, but
Mhm.
it is still a good resource. But
Yeah.
there are other resources that have a larger database that it's pulling from and a wider pool of
Mhm.
information that it's pulling from. So Google Scholar, just because of the way that it was formed and the way that it was like the data was compiled, there are other tools that are now better for it, but Google Scholar is still good.
Mhm.
there's always going to be another tool that's bigger and better. But, you know, so I would recommend just sifting through her full deck. And if you do nothing else, just grab that slide that has the recommended tools. And she talks about prompt engineering in here too.
Did any of these AI presentations, I know I don't see it on here unless within them, talk about the concerns with AI, the environmental impact of using it,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
the fact that it is how it steals art from real artists out there,
Yep.
their art that's out there, or their works, or anything, the stealing of what it uses to generate its answers.
You're a step ahead of me because I put
Oh,
that
sorry.
into AI literacy. Yeah, yeah. But yeah.
Cool, cool.
So
Always want to make sure we have both sides. Yeah, well, we have
yeah,
all the information, because it is a major issue that a lot of people have, a lot of
yep,
concern that people have with the environmental impact. And I mean, I know a lot of, I don't know, I follow a lot of artists online,
yeah,
and they're all unanimously against any any AI because it
yeah.
steals from them.
The example, these two images on the side, if you can see them,
Mhm.
these are actually generated by Night Cafe. And Night Cafe did actually generate some amazing images, but I chose the ones that are just wrong. And so my favorite one is this one up top because if you look really, really closely, her chest is facing towards us and her head is facing towards us, but her hands are facing the other direction.
Ow.
Yeah. And in this one, her chest is facing towards us, but her head is twisted around so that she's looking at the person she's talking to, and her hands are in the right
That's
position, but her torso is wrong.
that's some exorcist things going on
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
yeah. Like, I don't know how she's still alive right now. And in this bottom one, I told it to generate Anne of Green Gables in front of yeah, and it did that. But it also, every time it generates a building, it makes multiple chimneys. I don't know what source information AI is drawing from that it thinks houses just have a million chimneys. Like it must be drawing from like a mansion or an estate or something. But yeah,
Weird.
yeah,
Weird.
yeah. So in terms of,
You want graphics, you should go somewhere like, we've talked about this
yeah,
before on previous, Pixabay or Unsplash. Those are, real, shareable stuff that people
yeah.
are putting out there on purpose for you to use. Yeah. If you
So
need
I'm,
something free, especially for libraries, we can't really pay for an artist to design things for us
yeah.
oftentimes. Yeah.
So now there are more, to your point, there are more frameworks that are helping libraries put rhyme and reason to helping libraries and their patrons understand what they should know about AI
Hmm.
and what are the frameworks and skills that people should build to be able to understand how AI works, what it's all about, but then assess the ethics and the impact. So I pulled up a deck from Nick Tanzi, who's been talking about AI forever and a day, and he gave this slide on the 6 frames for AI literacy. And there are multiple frameworks that are being put together for AI literacy, but this one is kind of like a good general category thing. And now there are more resources that are being put together to help libraries chunk this out so that it can be folded into our search support, into makerspace support, into all this different stuff, research support, everything. But so the decks on the bottom here give rhyme and a reason to what we should be paying attention to. And there were more decks that were about, and of course I didn't make it to every single session, like that's
Oh
impossible.
no, that'd be impossible.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so some of these sessions I actually attended, and some of them I just had to. I know Nick, so I knew that he was doing it. So I think I've seen his session at other stuff. So if I didn't see that one there, I saw it somewhere else. And so these are some of the frameworks that you can compare around and see which framework you like better, but you'll find that there's overlap and they're all pretty similar. I just put my top two favorites. And then, so the next one is once you know what you should be paying attention to in terms of AI ethics and implementation, how the training set works, how it should be implemented in different contexts, then the other sessions that I pulled were all about AI strategy. Because if you're going to be implementing AI into your library or helping your community members implement AI into their businesses or into their academic side or whatever they're doing, you need to also build in a strategy. So this is what you need to know, and this is how you're going to do it. So this slide deck actually blended the AI literacy and the strategy together in an academic framework. And Daniel Rasmus, he did a session on strategy in the age of AI. So if you flip through this when you get a chance, this actually gives you the whole skinny and what you need to know to. This is slide, I will admit, this slide is a lot when you're first looking at it. But if you take a second and focus your eyes on each different little like area of the wheel and the description on it, it does help. And that's not something that you're going to be able to do right now. It takes a second for your like I notice whenever I go to this slide, my eyes go out of focus and then I have to take a second and then go back in, but it gets there. And so this is the slide I was looking for. So this is sort of like the actual steps and things that you should be looking at to be able to build out a full-on AI strategy that touches on the topics that you should have. And so if you do, I just saw that this slide deck is 74 slides long. So if you do nothing else, if you go to those two slides, then I
That
call
strategy
that a
slide
win.
is good for anything too.
Yeah,
Not
no,
just
this
AI. I mean,
is,
that's like
yeah,
good general concepts for anything you're going to implement. Wow, I like it.
pretty much, yeah. You know, and the techniques behind building strategy, it didn't actually change that much for AI. It just
Oh,
you just apply it slightly differently.
cool.
So I'm going to close out, and again, I recommend just scanning through these whole slides. I'm just doing the highlights right now, but I'm going to jump back in here. So then what naturally came up was how can we leverage these new tools that we're finding out about, these new technologies we're finding about, these new processes and techniques to do more stuff? And if you've been attending these my computers and libraries recaps before, you'll know that I did cover hybrid programming during COVID. But now hybrid programming, I said then that it wasn't going to go anywhere, and
Oh
it
yeah.
didn't, and it hasn't. It's just evolving. So this one has been, oh, for some reason it skipped over to slide 23, which is random, but this one came out of Joshua Bryant and Zach Parrish, and there's the one I'm looking for. So he talked about how to update your programming to be able to use a hybrid, which is a combination of digital programming and in-person programming. And this is actually something that conferences everywhere have been trying to tackle
Oh
is
yeah.
how can we do the same event and host the thing in person for the people that want to go in person, but also record and send out the sessions at the same time, but still have good audio quality and actually catch everything that we need to. And people have tried that little owl microphone where it's moving back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the best implementations that I actually saw here was there was a session on affordable housing. This wasn't in a conference. It was actually just, I think it was Civic Nebraska and NeighborWorks that was putting together an event. And they had the speaker sitting there, and then they had a moderator right up front, and the moderator was sitting with a laptop, and she had the Zoom session open on the laptop on her lap, and they had the speaker mic'd up so that the audio could be clearly heard from the laptop, and they recorded the entire session through her laptop camera. And it actually, I attended one session in person and one on Zoom, and you didn't miss anything from it if you went to the Zoom session. Like you could still hear everything clearly. The
Nice.
audio was synced up. But these guys took this whole thing a step further. And so I'm going to skip over to, I'm doing my session, my little slide preview thing, so I get you to the right thing. So for each of the different tech categories, they knew that libraries had access to different technology. So they put together varying levels of tech options based on the budget and the time that you had available to learn how to use the stuff. So this is for if you're trying to offer a hybrid experience for either workshops or conferences or makerspace sessions, and you want to be able to reach the people that either can't get out of the house or their schedule just doesn't allow them to get out at that same time. So this is something that you can sift through so you can figure out which configuration works best for you. And as long as you have all of these different components available, then you are ready to roll. And I'm going to jump back over here. So they basically just put together the how to actually put the tech side together, how to start small and grow, and then some examples of how they use this to expand their impact. And yeah, so it's a slightly longer deck, but it is that for a reason. So I recommend just scanning through this one too. And if you're so inclined, reach out to them because they'll know more about it than I do. And I'm going to jump over in here. So the other one that, and this is actually a session that I moderated. So Scott was talking about how to do KM, which is knowledge management in the library. So right now, a lot of the libraries, both small and like large and small, they have multiple different departments and different segments, and those departments tend to be siloed so that one department doesn't really know what's going on in the other. And sometimes they need to do resource sharing, and they want to be able to cross-train their staff so that as people leave and go to other organizations, that knowledge isn't lost. Most of it can be retained inside of the knowledge management platform. So he actually ran through and did the skinny on how to build what that platform looks like. He used SharePoint, but there's other platforms that you could use. I think he chose it because he already had access to it. And so he went through and gave a framework for what this would actually look like for implementation. And so if you are new to knowledge management, so was he. And he learned everything, and then he was able to learn it well enough and implement it well enough that he put together a session, and then he learned more by teaching other people. So yeah, this is
Nice.
a good one for like the knowledge management basics if you're trying to shift over from disorganized chaos siloed stuff over into cohesive awesomeness.
And that's a good
And
that he explains that, I wasn't an expert, but I figured it out. And that's just a
yeah,
good example of like, you can too.
right? Yeah. And like I talk to libraries all the time that had never even touched a website before, and they're like, fine, we got to do this. And then they figure it out. So it's just how it happens.
Hmm.
And so this one, makerspaces have been around for a while, but he actually talks about how he builds he uses makerspaces as a tool for community connection to be able to bring entrepreneurs together in different ways and then bring together students in different ways. And then he does specialized projects to be able to do community impact. So he knew that there was a um, like special needs group that was out of the school system that needed to have different support and they needed different outreach. And he also had different high school groups that were trying to learn 3D printing skills and learn skills in a way that actually does some good in the community. So it's a simple project, but he just had those high school students learn how to build fidget toys. And so he built like they designed they either downloaded the template off of Tinkercad because I've seen similar templates, or they learned how to adjust it and create their own. But then the high school students 3D printed them and then turned it into like a little small mini business. And then they sold it to the local schools so that they could distribute the fidget toys to their students. And yeah, so it was like a
Sounds
really
fun.
yeah, and it was like a really concentrated effort and it was easy to replicate because it has like a simple step-by-step procedure. So they just took they plucked out a single problem that was facing their community and worked with they call it the Teens Tech for Good. I couldn't remember what they called this, so I was scanning through to find. So they built like the little mini camp, and those mini camps, they did like the example that he gave was the 3D printing, but it sounds like they do other projects too. So, and this got the teens engaged, helped them build all those different skills, and this is what they made.
Oh, it's adorable.
Yeah, you know, like we did the articulated octopi, and
Yeah,
my
I've seen
niece and
octopuses and
yeah,
dragons. I've never seen a snail before.
right, and I've done but they were cool.
Hmm.
And so then they branched out into like Infinity Cube. And so it's not like an incredibly hard thing to do. And but it's like, this isn't the hard thing to do. It's putting it together and turning it into a cohesive thing where you can distribute it out. And then you have to figure out payment processing systems and figure out how to reach your audience. And that's the hard thing to do. So this doesn't have to be hard. It's the soft skills of actually starting the business and connecting the product over to the people who need it.
Hmm.
That is what they really learned. And they learned how to apply this simple technology to do something good. So cool.
Hmm.
And I'm going to jump back over into this one. Actually wasn't one that I was able to make it to, but I saw makerspaces, so I clicked it open. And in hindsight, I kind of wish I'd made it to that one. I think I was probably moderating at the time.
Mm.
But if I hadn't been moderating, then I wouldn't have seen Scott's session. So cool. And I won't dig into this one too much, but we're also adjusting the way that we use social media because social media has become politicized right now. Libraries were spending all their time on building out the Twitter platforms, which turned into X, and then X turned into a whole thing. We won't get into that. But now people are leaving one platform and going over to others. And some people, this was true even before, but people were starting to leave Facebook or not use it as often. And now Blue Sky is becoming more popular.
Hmm.
And the the funny part of it is that Blue Sky actually originated from the people who made Twitter, but then Blue Sky branched off into its own thing and is no longer run or operated by the former CEO of Twitter or the current owners of Twitter now X.
Yeah.
And so they basically adapted the same technology but ran it in a different direction. So it doesn't have all the same feature components, but people like Blue Sky more, or they're starting to, because it has better privacy security policies, better content filtering policies, and there's just a whole bunch of different pros and cons to it. So he
And
talked a lot about,
they're adding features to it as well as
yeah,
things go.
yeah.
Like any of these
And
social media.
it'll evolve. Like it'll, as more people go to it, it'll evolve and grow into something different.
I know here
So,
at the Library Commission, we do keep track of, well, we ask libraries to report to us. I think it's on the public library survey related to that,
mhm,
on if they're on social media and which ones they are, and so that we can keep that in our database so we just know. And at least once a month, one of our IT people reports that another few libraries dropped Twitter. More
mhm,
libraries don't have Twitter. More libraries don't have Twitter anymore. And that's something we've been talking about here. I mentioned, should we still be using it if the people, like the libraries, we at the Library Commission as a state library, our viewers, I guess, would be libraries and library staff,
yeah.
not actually the
And
general public. And if those libraries are no longer on Twitter, should we be there anymore? Because where did our
yeah,
audience go? We got to find out where they're at. I mean, we
it's,
do have
and
our Facebook and we have Instagram already, so that's good. But do we need to get into, I don't know about TikTok or Blue Sky or whatever, because that's where our library,
yeah.
for us, our libraries have gone to. Yeah,
And when I help libraries set up their websites and they tell me which social media they're using, they never say Twitter.
not anymore.
So, yeah. So, and that's why I pulled up this slide here that actually describes the most popular social media platforms, and Twitter is actually dropping down
Mhm.
the ranks because
And this
Twitter,
must be says it's through 2023.
yeah.
So this
And
is
this,
before Blue Sky.
so Twitter's actually, I checked the more current peer research, and
Mhm.
Twitter actually went lower.
Yeah.
So, and then TikTok went higher in the newer one, but
Mhm.
then we don't know the exact future of TikTok either.
Of course, it
So,
comes and
yeah,
goes.
yeah, So, but still, like the general, the types of platforms that are still on the most popular list are the same, but
Mhm.
the numbers are just slightly different from the slide that is in here versus the
Mhm.
more current data.
Yeah. And it
So
is
this
a
still
juggling
holds
act
true.
between, you mentioned originally the political part of it. Some people want to leave Twitter or Facebook, because someone actually commented, I no longer use Facebook and have no plans to return. That's great.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
People for their own personal philosophical reasons, political reasons, say, I will not be on that platform that is run by someone I don't agree with or who's
yeah.
running it the
He
way I
who
don't
shall not be
agree.
named.
However, if
Yeah,
you're a library, and this is something we also talk about all the time, go where your users are, go where your
hmm,
patrons are, go where the citizens in your community are. So as a library, you may still have to be on Facebook because that's where the people in your community are. If you're going to want to trying to reach out to them, or reach out to people who are not users yet, but you want to become library users, you may, as an institution, still need to be on a particular platform.
yeah,
And I've seen some places, some institutions have done things like they're using them not as much as they did, but they're still there because, well, they don't want someone to steal their URL for, and steal what their profile. Um,
yeah,
but they'll only post like important things, like an announcement of a conference, but we won't post all of these social and chatty things and fun things that we used to on that particular platform, but we will
yeah,
still do like the bare minimum because some, being a person and being an institution using it, you might need to make different decisions. Yeah.
yeah. And I was just kind of quick scrolling through some of the examples that David Lee King put in here about what he's put in. And one of the other questions that it didn't come up in his session that I remember, but it came up in another session, which was if you share a picture of like the kids in a story hour program, do you need to get permission from the parents to be able to post that on social media?
Hmm.
And or do they even care? Can you just do like during registration for a story hour, can you just put in a little checkbox that says, can we use pictures of you and your family from this programming? And then
Yeah.
you can just,
Yeah,
if they
blanket.
check yes, cool. Then if they check no, then
then you know you can't. Yeah.
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 And a lot of parents just check yes, but it's also, we also have to start thinking about, are these images going to be fed into an AI model?
That's
And
something. Yep.
do people want to become part of a training set? Because like Google and Facebook and all these, and probably X and everybody, they use all the they did use all of the text and the phrasing and the images that were being put into social media to be able to train their AI platforms. And
Hmm.
that was true from the start. We just didn't know it. But how much of it are they still doing? And are they finding different ways to use our information in more new and creative ways? So this slide deck is sort of the, if you pair this one with David Lee King's AI tools, this one tells you, this slide deck that I have open right now talks about the platforms that you should be using, some of the different techniques and what you can do with it, and some of the more updated stuff. He talks about what could be going on with TikTok, the future
When
of
it was
TikTok, and yeah,
banned
yeah.
for a whole day.
So
Yeah.
once you figure out which platforms you should be going to, because times they are a changing, then you can go to his other slide deck and start digging into the AI tools that you can use to generate better content and generate better videos. And then you can also jump over to Brian Pitchman's slide deck and start learning more about the video content generation. And he also links over to an AI playground that he put together himself that lets libraries start to experiment with these different tools without having to create your own account or create all of your, you don't have to create an account with each individual service. You just create an account with him. And then he's lazy. He's not going to sell your data. He's not going to do anything with it. Like he is like, so if you can create it with him instead of with the tools, and you can use that to experiment with how all this stuff works and decide if that's something that you want to do. So that is in this slide deck here, the AIN libraries one. So it all comes together. And then you'll jump over into, so these are the specific, some of the specific slide decks, but then I also included this slide on just general concepts that started recurring across multiple different sessions. So the digital walls and the digital displays, those have been around for a little while, but they're getting more popular and they're getting more mainstream. So there are some libraries that actually built on like they designated a single wall and then they got about 40 different monitors and they put them side by side and then synced them all together so it turns into a cohesive system. So you're basically built, like if you've gone to an art gallery that has a digital wall, they did
Hmm.
that same exact thing. And there are more cost-effective ways to do that, and the cost-effective ways usually require more work on the back end from the library or a vendor to be able to get all those screens to talk together and be cohesive and updated. So if you have higher tech skills, you can usually do it for cheaper. But if you have a grant or if you have more money behind you, then there are more expensive, simplified ways that's more plug and play. So there are different options that you can use for a digital wall. And there are also you can also just do like a single display screen so that it refreshes to show people what the most updated services and resources and featured tools are going. And there's also like digital display walls so that you can just actually buy a table that has a digital screen on top.
Hmm.
Um, I know we got some of those in the latest round of grant applications. I don't remember exactly which vendor.
Someone had asked for what do they call it, an infinity gaming
Yeah, it
table.
was something like that. Yeah, I couldn't remember exactly what it was called, but there were at least one or two people that asked for that table. And so those are getting more popular, and it's easier to refresh digital content than it is to purchase physical signage or purchase printables. So you don't actually have to go through a local printer. You have a higher upfront cost to buy the digital monitor display or buy the digital table, but the cost kind of sets itself off over time because you don't have the recurring print cost of printing out posters or printing out standing displays, because those standing displays can run like $100 to $200 just for the metal frame, and then you can get like the scroll that you have to print can be another like $40. And if you refresh your display every single season or every few months, then you don't have to replace the metal stand anymore, but you still have to drop 40 to $80 on the actual signage itself. And if you just get a couple digital displays for maybe $300 a pop, then you're just refreshing and uploading new digital content, and you might bulk at the upfront cost of the hardware, but if you figure out what it would cost year round for your printing cost, it levels out. And so then the next one was StackMap. And StackMap it's just one example of the tools that you can use it's a wayfinding tool. So in larger libraries that have multiple floors and multiple layers, there were people that were walking in and saying like, I'm looking for this specific book, or I'm looking for information about technology and business, and the librarian has like a line 5 layers deep. I just need to find this book, or I need to. So this is a digital tool that you can pull up, and you can tap in a category, and it says, point me to this call number, and then it will basically pull up little arrows that say,
Hmm.
go here. And so there was a session in here that actually talked about how to find, it's a tool called StackMap, and they talked about how they adopted that technology. And this was in a university setting, but it can also work in multiple different settings, like they're not university specific. And I put in and wayfinding tools because I've also seen like augmented reality tools that are coming out that do a similar thing. And I'm sure that if you look at StackMap competitors, they're probably not the only one that actually does that. So yeah, it's a whole thing. And
I will
then,
mention before you go on to that, because someone asked about this. Yes, these slides will be available afterwards, along
mhm,
with recording. So I know Amanda was jumping around just the different slide decks and things that she linked off of here on the CIL website, but a link to her Google Slides available as well when we post up the archive recording of this show. So you'll have access to that to jump to them quickly.
yep. And so I already talked about the shifts in social media, so I won't talk about that again. And the advances in hybrid was worth talking about again, just because it's what we're using to keep on keeping on. Who knows if we're going to get another pandemic or what's going to go on. And there are more libraries that are starting to use like remote work incentives. So figuring out the hybrid situation that works for patrons and the hybrid situation that it works for employees. You can actually recruit and retain more employees if you use a hybrid or all remote work mechanism, especially if you're in a remote area, than if you were to not be using that hybrid. So there were some sessions both in this conference and in others that were talking about how they were bringing their in-person employees together with their remote work employees so that they were on the similar playing field. And yeah, so that a lot of the same tech that was used to reach patrons better were also used to reach employees better. And so that was a whole thing. That's why I put that in twice, because you're using it on the back end and the front end, hybrid all around people. And so this one is the we talked about how people are employing new technologies to update their systems, but people are also shifting how they work together with people. And I recently was able to go to the knowledge management conference, KM World, that was back in November. Yes, November. And I'm like, when I went to that, I was like, why isn't knowledge management and library land just talking all together? Like,
Mhm.
they're not that different. But so this is talking about how we can build out those knowledge management systems so that we can build better partnerships both within an organization so that we're all on the same page and we can start strategizing and figuring out different ways to work together because we know what the other departments are doing. And then the other one is actually breaking silos across organizations. So when you start having greater visibility into what the local school is doing and greater visibility into what the local child care center is doing, when you know what they're facing, you can figure out better how to work together to build out new library services and build out support resources. So it's building that knowledge management platform both within your own organization and building transparency into greater transparency into what partner organizations are doing. Because otherwise, we have no idea and how can we help? And then we talked about different ways to bring people together. I called it innovative thinking, but this is actually a tool that entrepreneurs use to be able to bring together multiple different perspectives and get people talking about looking at the same problem from different lenses to be able to build out better services and better support resources. So this was actually a session that I gave in there. It was a workshop that I did that talked about how we can start bringing together library people with the affordable housing people with the
Mhm.
entrepreneur people, with the business people, with the tech people, and get all these different voices talking about the problem of how we can address affordable housing. And right now, libraries are all aware of affordable housing, but they're not necessarily looking at the role of the library as part of the solution. But
Mhm.
when, and part of that is because it's hard to actually visualize what the whole landscape of affordable housing looks like. And if you don't understand what the problem is, then you can't really, it's more difficult to be a solid part of the solution. So this actually goes hand in hand with knowledge management, which is if you're going to bring people together, you have to have visibility into the problem and into the system and what other organizations are doing, and when the business people can see what's going on with the with like the advocacy people in the affordable housing space, and then when the library people can see what's going on with that same advocacy, and then you get all those people together in the same room and start doing a design sprint to say this is what the challenge is, let's start rapid fire starting to figure out what the solution looks like. Then all the people in that room, they go back to their home organizations, back to the library, back to their business, back to their nonprofit, and they say, we need to change the way that we offer our services and we need to build this partnership in a new and different way because this is a problem that has been around, but we just didn't know about it. And we could have been addressing this and we could have been improving our own organization by applying this and adding value to the community and adding value to our partner organizations in a way that we didn't know was a thing. So that's what that's all about. It's a whole lot for just a single sentence on a slide, you know. So the next one is collaboration through the innovation spaces, which kind of ties into that innovative thinking. And if you go back over to that slide deck on community building through maker spaces, they start to touch more on this, which is we're offering access to technology, but how can we start leveraging that technology in partnership with all those communities that I just talked about so that we can start developing more activities that are catered toward community needs. And this is a trend that I've been looking at for a while, which is why I was really happy to see that 3D printing project and the Teen for Good projects. But we can do more than that. Like, there are way more activities and services and resources that we can do with entrepreneurs and innovators and all this stuff. And the challenge of that is actually packaging it in a way that is easy to digest, easy to understand, and easy to replicate. Because libraries can look at that Teen for Good project and look at the step-by-step instructions for how to build that 3D printed object. But then when you get multiple people that are like, that is an easy model to follow. But in the grand scale of things, when people see that model and start to copy it, and then you have 10 libraries doing it, then 20 libraries doing it, then 100 libraries doing it, and all of them are starting Etsy shops to sell their fidget toys to the local community. Those Etsy shops also go out nationwide or globally. So how many different source vendors do you need for that same exact thing because there was a simplified template to be able to do it? And that's happened in Etsy, and that's been happening with Etsy where one person makes something and then the market gets saturated.
Yeah,
So how can we start building that same similar template and build the and scale the solution enough to be able to solve the problem nationwide, but also offer other activities that solve other problems? Because people are going to copy that model because it's easy.
because they made it easy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And like, we all love Google because they hit the easy button. And that's the challenge that libraries need to do now is we need to take our services like this and hit the easy button. Because for me and for probably a lot of you, we can look at that slide deck and we can look at how that system works and we can replicate it. But not everyone can do that. Not everyone can look at that and say, I'm going to turn this into a codified system, like a step-by-step implementation process, because I am the weirdo that has the background in being able to build out scalable systems and work with startup communities and I can talk to entrepreneurs. Not every library has that vantage point. So that's why a lot of libraries, they start and stop with building the fidget spinner or they build the whatever, and then they just hand it out to the local group. But then they find out it's not sustainable because they just handed out the equipment and they still have the cost of maintenance on the machine and the cost of the filament. So how can we turn that into a tangible guide? Because as far as I know, that slide deck does not also have a tangible guide. And then how can we build that tangible guide over and over and over again for all the major problems and all the possible library services so that we can scale the right things?
Mm, yeah. I'm gonna jump in here. Got a question, but then also just a comment I want to make. We are a little over our hour, of course. We did start a little late today.
Yeah.
That's okay. If you need to leave because you only allotted an hour for our show, that's fine. We are recording the whole time. As long as it takes for Amanda to get through all of her information, we will have everything recorded. So you can always come back and watch the remainder of it later when you do have time. And we have a question, I guess a question or just maybe something to think on about how do you get to a point of what you were just talking about with the things being everybody creating the same thing that was an easy thing to make. How do you get to a point of reasonable adoption without saturation? That's what you're struggling with, huh?
The fun part is that you only know that saturation has happened after it's happened.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we actually need we need as many libraries to repeat the same thing over and over again because we want the point of saturation. And then we want the point of oversaturation because then when people find that point, as soon as they find another easily replicable model that solves another problem that isn't saturated, they'll switch over to that.
Let's switch to the next thing. Yeah.
And yeah, so we want saturation. I wouldn't worry about saturation. I would worry more about developing the next thing that people are going to shift over to.
Cool.
And so because we're a little bit over, I won't dig too far into everything else on this slide because this is what I've been looking at for a while, so rambles happen. So the next thing that I'll just go over through on this slide is the nationwide collaboratives. And it's because we have communities that are coming together to solve all these different problems, but now with all the different changes happening in the library world, there are new crops of problems happening, like coming up to face libraries. So for example, um, one of the things that we're facing here, and I know that other state libraries are facing, is that a lot of us are losing library funding. We're losing IMLS funding, we're losing all this. And because the funding may no longer be there, then it's going to be more difficult to offer those services. One of those services could be like being able to have websites for the library.
Mm-hmm.
And like there are multiple different state agencies that use that IMLS funding to be able to give access to those websites. But what we didn't look at before, and something that we probably should have been looking at, is that we're all doing the same exact thing, but we're all doing 8 times as much work because we're all building and rebuilding the same services. Because right now here in Nebraska, we're building out the training system to be able to use WordPress and build out library websites. They're doing the same thing in Oklahoma. They're doing the same thing in Missouri. They're doing the same thing in Kentucky. They're doing the same thing all over again. And
Mm-hmm.
each one of those libraries, they had to generate their own grant funding to be able to do the same exact thing. But if we say, let's pool our resources and let's just build one single portal that does library training and WordPress training and update all this stuff together,
Mm-hmm.
now we don't need 50 different grants for each different state to be able to do the same exact thing. We only need one grant to build out the training resources and then smaller
Wow.
grants to be able to gain access to the host platform. So this was what innovation and efficiency looks like in a good way, because this is something that none of us really looked at before. We never actually dug deep to look at these problems before, but now the new evolution of building those partnerships and ecosystems is to build out collaboratives that are going to be able to pool resources across the nation, because we are all doing the same thing. But it all just starts with actually getting people together in the same room and getting people on board to say, we're all facing the same thing. Now let's do this thing. Cool. So the next thing
Makes
on
sense to
here,
me. Yes.
yeah, yeah. And it's not like it's a new thing. Collaboratives aren't new. Like people have been doing them. We're just now applying them to different problems that are cropping up. So the next one is, these are some of the resources. I wanted to give a shout out to Patrick Sweeney because his 2 sessions were awesome. Patrick Sweeney is from the,
Every
oh,
library.
thank you. The word was just gone for a second, even though I've said it so many times recently. But he gave 2 sessions. One was presenting key data for impact, and the other one was community strategies, getting the message across. So he talked a lot about the current challenges that libraries are facing and actually gave tangible pathways towards a solution, and gave tangible ways that we can start leveraging social media differently, how to start building out different community partnerships and starting to bring people together to advocate for the library in new and different ways. And so I recommend just going through and taking a gander at some of these different trends on here, just because we are a little bit over time here. But no, just even looking at his slide deck.
Mhm.
Oh, please tell me that this is actually on here. If it had been on there, I probably would have linked it, but let me do a quick check and make sure I link that for y'all. Oh, these are the workshops. I'm going to do a quick search. Key data. Oh, of course he didn't put it on here. Dang it. That's why I
Yeah,
didn't link it, is because
unfortunately,
it wasn't on there.
it's
Yeah.
not a requirement in some
Yeah.
places. So share that. Yeah.
And so I would, since it's not on here, I actually recommend going to every library's website because they also have a lot of those resources on there and they have
And
different,
sometimes they do their own presentations just
yeah,
themselves, their own
yeah,
sessions they might have out there. Yeah.
yeah. So I would go to every library and possibly just reach out to Patrick to see if he may have just forgotten to upload the slide deck. So you can also just ask him to upload the slide deck to Computers and Libraries and he'll probably do it. So pretty much every session that I went to, it turned into a story of resilience and just how people were dealing with the times. And I was not surprised by this in any way, shape, or form. I gave a few sessions and people started stopping me on the street to share their stories.
Mhm.
And that was like an incredible thing to actually hear what people were facing. It was incredible and hard because not all of them were easy stories to hear. But it was good to actually have that community and kind of start knowing that we're all working together on the same way and the same page and that we're not alone in doing this. So that was my takeaway from it. It was nice. It was hard, but it was nice. So I will be here if you have any questions right now. Otherwise, I did forget to put in my contact slide, so just casually ignore me while I do that right now.
Not a problem. Yeah, as anybody has, looks like most people stuck around. Awesome. Thank you so much for everyone. If you do have any other last minute questions, comments, or anything, suggestions you want to share, type in the question section. Someone did have a suggestion earlier that I didn't grab because we kind of went on to other things, but I thought it was a good idea, so I was going to mention it. When you were talking about taking photographs of like story times with children in it, and do you put on the permission slip or the registration thing for the parents to say yes or no? They said that it's vital to get the kids' permission too, depending on their age,
Yeah,
of course.
yeah,
It's never too early to get them involved in making decisions, and that's
true.
a good idea too. Yeah, maybe say check, tell the parents, do you and your child want this?
Yeah,
Discuss with them what might be happening with posting these photos on the library's websites or social medias.
yeah. And some kids are at an age where they're able to make their own decision like that, and some are just going to blindly say, yeah. So, yeah.
Age and how they're developing.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did put, and this is the link to the slide deck. I'm changing permission so people can actually see it.
Yep.
And this is in the chat. And I think this only shows up for you for now.
Yeah. But I will grab that link so I have it. Yes. Perfect. Yep, and this will be included when I get the archive and the recording up. Perfect.
Mm.
Doesn't look like I have any other desperate questions. Some thank yous coming through. Thank you, Amanda and Krista. You're welcome. Good information. Always is, yes. And as Amanda said, this was just her highlights. There was a lot more at Computers Libraries if you look at the
Yeah.
agenda there. Also, if you're interested, and I don't know if you were going to mention this, there is a companion, I don't know what we call it nowadays now. Internet Librarian is another conference that the same organization does, and it's always it's gone virtual entirely now.
Yep.
When the COVID pandemic started, they did virtual, of course, and now ITI, the company, Information Today, that does both of these conferences. They used to both be in-person conferences, Computers and Libraries in DC and Internet Librarian in Monterey, California, one on each coast. Now Internet Librarian has gone totally virtual, and it is coming up in
October.
October, November. It's always in the fall. Of course, I can't remember my calendar. But anyways, if you would like to possibly hear some of the similar type presentations as well as at Computers and Libraries, register for Internet Librarian. I believe they're looking for
The call for speakers is open through
call for speakers right
mid-May.
now. Yeah,
And
yeah.
I just submitted my session proposal. I forgot to do it last year, but I did it. So
um,
I am typing in the slide deck, so the info for Internet Librarian
It'll be
is
there
in
for
the
you when
slide
you get
deck.
it. You can
Yeah.
also just, as what Amanda just did here, use your search engine of choice and type in Internet Librarian 2025. Yeah. So we do have other comments. Thank you. This is very interesting. My brain is trying to formulate a framework involving organizational culture and knowledge management. Cool. And someone did have a question, and I will grab it since you're still here working on this.
Yeah.
I'm not a librarian, but a support staff that works in a library makerspace. My question is about the teen program with the fidgets, and how can I go about finding the specific needs in my community? Community
That
needs.
that is a good question, and the recommendation that I have is to look at some of the strategic reports of some of your local organizations, look at the strategic reports of your town or state, and look at the economic development priorities in your community or in your state to be able to know which problems they're focusing on. Because they'll tell you whether they're looking at affordable housing, whether they're looking at childcare, what they're looking at. And then once you know the main categories that the economic development and business community is looking at, then you'll know like the best bets of where to place your focus.
Mhm, mhm. Many cities or counties have do regular surveys of the community or
Yeah,
a planning document that is the city's plan for the next 5 years, and they've
yeah.
done surveys of the community, like of what are you all concerned about? Go and look for
Like
that.
if you
Don't,
Google,
as Amanda was talking before about all these different states doing the same things and repeating it, don't reinvent and do it yourself if it's already been
yeah,
done out there. Go and just search and see, did my city already do a survey in the last 5 years about what's going on in our community,
yeah,
wanting to know what people want, what people need. Look for those kind of things. Think about things that you might not think are, and not everything you'll find on these would be something the library can do something about,
yeah.
of course, but there will be some things that will jump out at you. You'll notice they're like, hey, we can do a session on that. We can do a thing on that.
Like here we use Blueprint Nebraska. So
Mhm.
if you Google statewide economic development plan, almost
Chambers of
every
Commerce.
state, yeah, Chamber of Commerce will have it. Like localized economic development groups will have it. And the state of the state address will also be talking about the current and upcoming priorities across the state.
Mhm.
So yeah, those are good places to start.
And that's the thing that the community needs, looking outside the library. Don't just think, oh, this is what libraries usually do, so we're going to do all these things. Just look
Yeah,
outside and see what's happening in your community. Sometimes it's just walking down the street and seeing what's going on, what people are
yeah.
concerned about. Attend your village council
Town
meeting,
halls,
town
local town
halls.
halls are good.
Yes, be there to just not just to gather information about what's going on, but also to let them see the library is here. We're a thing.
Yeah,
We can be part of this maybe, and just seeing your face there helps too. Yeah. And then,
yeah,
okay, so we got a big thank you, all caps, very helpful. Good.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So Amanda's updating her slides in real time. There we go. October 28th to
Yep.
30th. Ooh, Halloween. Right. Yes.
Oh, sweet.
Close to Halloween. The week of. Yeah.
Close enough.
Uh, and like I said, this is entirely virtual, no travel involved.
Yep.
So check out and check it out.
And I also linked the image itself to the website.
Perfect. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. I think we will wrap things up since Amanda's getting her slides finished up. And I am going to, while you're working on that, so don't panic, I'm going to pull presenter control back to my screen.
Go for it.
To my wrap up of the show. So, as I said, this show, someone's have to figure out a good librarian costume. Definitely. Something unique, yeah.
Right.
So as I said, the show has been recorded. If we have links to our show recordings and our main NCompass Live page from all of our event pages, we just, like I said, use your search engine of choice and type in NCompass Live, the name of our show. It'll get our main page and our archive page will come up. This is our main page for the show with all of our upcoming shows that we have through May and June that are all scheduled. But right underneath there is a link to the archived NCompass Live shows page. And most recent one at the top here. So today's will be up there. Should be by the end of the day tomorrow at the latest, as long as GoToWebinar and YouTube cooperate with me. We'll have a link to the recording on our YouTube channel and then a link to Amanda's slides. Everyone who attended today's show and registered for today's show get an email from me when I post it out to our email list, letting you know when the recording is available. We also post up on our social media. Speaking of social media, we do have a Facebook page for NCompass Live. So if you do like to use Facebook, give us a like over there. We post, here's a reminder to log in today's show, announcements of the upcoming shows, when the recordings are available. Here's a recorded one, the one from last week. So we post there. We use the hashtag, a little abbreviation of our show name, NComp Live, everywhere we post. As I said, the Library Commission does still have a Twitter account at the moment, and we also have Instagram, where I'll post notifications about NCompass Live on. So you can keep track of what we're doing there if you like to use Facebook. While I'm here, you can see there's a search feature here. You can search our show archives too to see if we've done a show on a particular topic you might be interested in. You can search our full show archives or just the most recent 12 months if you want something that is just very current. That is because this is our full show archives, and I'm going to scroll down, but I'm not going to scroll all the way down because you can see this is a huge list. It is a big page, that's why we have the search at the top, but this is the full show archives of NCompass Live going back to when the show first premiered in January 2009. So 2025 is the 17th year of the show. Oh my gosh. Okay, but we have all of our show recordings here. So just do pay attention when you watch a recorded show to the original broadcast date. They all have the date here, so you know when it first was done. Many of the shows will be fine to watch. They'll be good, still good resources, stand the test of time, no problem. But some things will be become old and outdated. Resources may change drastically. Links might be broken. Resources might not exist anymore. People may work at different institutions and when they presented for us, et cetera, et cetera. So just pay attention to that original broadcast date whenever you watch any of the show recordings. But we will, as long as we have a place to keep our show archives, we'll always have them available here. It's something libraries do, keep things for historical purposes often. And as long as we have a place to keep them, which right now is the Library Commission's YouTube channel, we'll always have our show archives out there for anyone to watch. So that's it for today's show. Next week, you see I've got our shows booked all the way up through the end of June. Amanda will be back with us on May 28th. That is the last Wednesday in May. So look for her to decide whatever that topic may be. I don't know if you have any ideas right now or not, but it's a month away.
They'll figure it out, you know.
Keep an eye on it here. And next week, we'll be talking about advocacy, everyday advocacy for smaller libraries, practical and affordable solutions. Andrew Smith, who's an associate professor at Emporia State University, will be joining us to talk about that. This is going to be geared towards smaller libraries, of course, but definitely things any type of or size of library could use, I'm sure. So please do join us next week to talk about advocacy and register for any of our other upcoming shows. So thank you everyone for being with us this morning. Thank you for your patience as we started up a little late. And thank you, Amanda. We'll see you soon. Hope we all on a future episode of NCompass Live. Bye-bye.